the Latin American and Iberian Art Song podcast. My name is Patricia Caicedo. I'm in Barcelona, and today I'm excited for having Isaí Jess Muñoz to talk about a tenor and a professor of the University of Delaware, to talk about his new album, Visca L'Amor, Catalan Art Songs of the 20th and the 21st Century. Welcome, Isaí.
Patricia, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm really honored that you invited me.
So I'm very happy. I forgot to mention that you are a Barcelona Festival of Song ambassador.
I am, and it's an honor to just disseminate the name of Barcelona Festival of Song. I was there in 2010 with you, and it changed my life. It really was what began the process of collecting repertoire for this particular project.
So yes, this is something I want to ask you. When you came in 2010 to participate in the Barcelona Festival of Song, who was Isaí Jess Muñoz of that time? Who was that person of that time? And that Isaí, did he know Catalan Art Song? Have he sung Catalan Art Song? What happened with that previous Isaí? In which point of his career was he? How was it?
Well, I was actually pursuing my doctorate at Stony Brook University at the time. Mm-hmm. I had moved to New York in 2001 to do graduate studies at the Manhattan School of Music. And then after that, I was performing. I decided to keep New York as my home base and performed regionally and also abroad with opera companies and Spieltenor roles. But then I decided to go back and pursue the doctorate. And one of the things that I was really interested in looking into was the music of my heritage.
Where are you from?
So I am half Mexican, half Puerto Rican, but my parents, as they started looking through their family tree, both of them have a lot of lineage from Spain. And so actually, it's really funny that we're talking about this because one of my family members, they recently, close cousin, they recently did one of those lineage DNA tests. And it came back that they were like 70% something from Spain. And so I said, oh, well, I just can't wait to do this because having launched this new album. So in any case, one of the things that's interesting when a lot of this has changed in the last 10 years, I would say, but one of the sad things is that often when students go to study their undergraduate or even graduate degrees, most of the focus is on Central European song literature. So Italian.
Very much. I mean, it continues to be almost like that. I mean, it's exotic when you learn other repertoire. I mean,
exactly.
Yes.
And, we understand it because, there are only so many semesters that a student has at an institution. They have a certain amount of credits that they have to fulfill. But most of the attention is on German, French. And so even I, who was of Hispanic origin, I had never had the opportunity to study the music of my own culture throughout my undergrad or graduate years. I had only done like 3 songs by Rodrigo. And so I had decided if I'm going to go back and pursue my doctorate, I would like my dissertation studies to focus on Iberian and Latin American art song. So I was awarded a grant to attend the Barcelona Festival of Song and to do some research at the Biblioteca de Catalonia, which you took us to, and you showed us the De Falla archives, the Conchita Badia archives there. I mean, that was just a phenomenal experience. And really what I was expecting when going to Barcelona or when planning my trip to Barcelona was to focus primarily on Spanish art song. You had mentioned that we would...
In Spanish.
Yes, the defy.
And your mind was not the Catalan, the song in Catalan or the Catalan language, I imagine.
Not at all. Not at all. You had mentioned that you would cover some Latin American repertoire, right? Also, the music of Brazil. So I knew that I might touch on some Portuguese and getting to know the differences between European Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese. But I had heard the music of Catalonia through the interpretations of Victoria de Los Angeles, Montserrat Caballé, Carreras, but it really wasn't until I went to Barcelona Festival of Song where you really emphasized. I remember that you brought in a linguist of the Catalan language, Mac McClure also came to the festival that year and spoke to us, did a master class, and that was unbelievably inspiring. And you assigned me a piece by Toldrá, Aquarel de Montseny.
Aquarela del Montseny. I remember, I can see you, I hear you singing it. So beautiful.
It was just such a gorgeous piece, and I just loved singing it. And I just realized in that moment I need to explore this repertoire more. There's something very interesting here. I found the language to be quite singable. But of course, as you and I know, one of the challenges has been that for many years, there hasn't been a clear breakdown of how this language can be applied in sung application for singers, right? An IPA breakdown. You're among those who have begun to break the barriers of that through your publications by providing IPA of some Catalan songs, and also I think of publishing houses like Boileau, where some of their editions are now providing that. I'm hoping to be able to actually publish an article in the coming year or so, specifically on aspects of the sung application of the Catalan language, which I think is very interesting because a lot of people would quickly assume that the language is most similar to Spanish, but
yes, and I think this is a huge surprise because for you, I imagine it was a surprise, as I have seen in many people who come to take the course. They say, "Oh, this is a complete different language."
Yes,
It's like learning French or learning Portuguese. Is another language. So is the approach, it needs to be much more comprehensive and go in depth because it's a complete new language and culture.
yes, it's not simply a regional dialect of
No.
Spanish, of Castellano. It's an entirely different language, and I found that in many ways it's more similar to French in its treatment.
Yeah,
Similar
it
to,
is kind of in the middle between
it's in the middle,
French and Spanish, no?
and
Like the
Spanish.
geographical situation of Catalonia, that is kind of sandwiched between France and Spain. We are just in the border, in the middle of these two countries.
Yes, it doesn't have the nasals that the French language has, but one of the things that I find to be interesting in the writing of the language, uh, obviously they use the accent grave, they use the accent aigu, they use the diaresis, and we have that application in Castellano as well, but not with the amount of frequency that we see in the Catalan language. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting to know about the language is how the unaccented syllables are treated, right? And how they can change the vowel coloring when the vowels are stressed or unstressed.
Also, I think for somebody who never have been in touch with the Catalan language, and probably they relate it with Spanish, Spanish is much more simple in terms of vocalic sounds. It's more just pure, straight, and only five vocalic sounds. So Catalan has many more sounds, and the repertoire of sounds is richer, is bigger.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's exciting.
It is
procedure.
exciting, and it makes for more colors, for a greater variety of colors. I think once you're really able to understand the distinctions within and the nuances of the language, um, then you're really able to paint, right, with that palette of many, many, many colors. I think one other thing that's important for our listeners to know is that I think there have now been 17 or 18 dialects that have been identified within the Catalan language itself. I mean, there's two primary dialect groups, the Occidental
Mhm.
and the Oriental. And for this recording, we wanted to focus a little bit more on the Oriental
We have the
dialect.
standard Catalan that is the one that is used on news and media and in
Exactly.
TV. So this we call the standard. So is the one we use in Barcelona. It doesn't mean that the other pronunciations are wrong. They're from other regions. Although Catalonia, for the audience, people who are listening to this, Catalonia is small. We are only between 9 and 11 million of Catalan speakers in the world. There are regions that have different accents, and there is one standard accent that is the one that is recommended for TV and media, etc. But it doesn't. But the other ones are also correct because the language is alive and is continuously changing and enriching.
And also because, again, when you're looking at the writing of the language, the writing itself doesn't change,
Yes.
right? And yes, and the differences are minor enough that you're able to understand them across any dialects or regional accents that you may find. So similar to Hochdeutsch in a way, where you would use it in journalism, as you said, and I think this is kind of becoming, uh, at the very least, the informal rule through which we singers work to apply the language to art song literature.
But one thing I want to go to that young, you are still young, of course, but younger, Isaí, who came in 2010. So you discover these songs, you sing this Acuarela del Montseny, we go to the Biblioteca de Catalunya, this, you see all these things that is a little bit, I understand because I also experienced that many years ago, overwhelming when you see all this music that I didn't know and it's so beautiful, it's so rich. So what is the feeling that what happens inside you at that moment when you just discover that? So what process starts in that at that moment?
Well, I was just excited because it immediately just exploded the realm of research and moved my research in a different direction. And in the end, for portions of my doctoral dissertation covering Iberian and Latin American art song, I decided that it was extremely important to focus some of that attention towards Catalan art song. And I was particularly moved by the history of the 20th and 21st century, and really just the challenges that composers of that era faced, right? And the
Yes.
challenges that Catalonian artists continue to face. It's very much a nationalistic practice. We know that the music was marginalized for many decades because composers really found themselves, and all artists, Catalonian artists for that matter, found themselves really living out the repression resulted from the Spanish
The
Civil War,
dictatorship. Yeah.
and then of course the Franco Dictatorship that followed, where the language of Catalan itself was censored. And so for me, it was really important to tell that story, because one of the things that, of course, was shocking to me was that so many pieces remained unpublished behind archives that were enshrouded for many years, while other pieces were now out of print. And so really this is to say that it's commendable, I think, what local publishing houses have been doing in the last 20 to 30 years to reproduce this music, to publish it, to give living Catalonian composers and librettists and poets a voice.
But this situation that you are mentioning of the music not being published, being in archives or hidden, is the situation of the Latin American art song music, the art songs also. So this is something common for different reasons, but it's something that we experience with the Latin American art song repertoire, and the reason because most of the composers are and works are not known. Sadly, this is a drama today. So, and with the Catalan repertoire happens something different that is beautiful that you say what you just said, because one of the goals at the Barcelona Festival of Song, or something that I really look for when preparing the festival and the sessions we have, is that creating this awareness in you, the people who come, that to say, oh, this repression happened, this political situation kept this music and culture hidden. And so this is a part of the world's heritage that has been covered or hidden. So we need to, and it's so beautiful, so let's sing it. So
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, now that you mentioned that this is a problem that occurred not only in Spain, but that we see it repeated in Latin America and Central and South America. I recall that one of the first composers that I was interested in was Carlos Guastavino. Mm-hmm. And now everyone is singing Guastavino.
Yeah, but Guastavino is, he was one of my first. Why? Because he is one of the few ones who had the fortune to be published by a publisher that at the time had a good distribution, and have the publications make the whole difference. Because but once you are published, you have the opportunity to be promoted and sung by people. If you are never published, so you will be forever lost or forgotten. So Guastavino is the tip of the iceberg, and he's the well-known of all of them.
So, what I was going to say was that what's interesting is you're absolutely right. That's how I became aware of his music. And yet, 20 years ago, it was still very difficult to attain his music here in the United States.
I know, it's still very difficult to find today, because
he's published.
He's published, imagine, because why? Most of his songs were published by a publisher called Ricordia Americana, another that is called Editorial Lagos. And they have, and still have, even we are in the internet times, I don't know what happened, but they are not interested in distributing it or republish this, because it's not economically rentable.
Advantageous. Yeah.
Advantageous, exactly. So there is not this in them the awareness of the responsibility they have to maintain this heritage and promote it. So it's just a business decision. So it will not give us a lot of money. So why to bother to republish or promoting this thing? And so it continued happening with Carlos Guastavino. So Carlos Guastavino being the well-known of all of them, imagine. So imagine with the hundreds of other composers and the many who never were published and are equally good.
So I think, that just merits further applause for you and the work that you continue to do. Because without you, who would be tapping today into the music of Jaime León?
Right? Jaime León would be forgotten, probably.
and so many other composers, through your publications and our other colleagues who are also doing tremendous work in this regard. And so we hope that our new album of Catalan art songs can be part of that movement to help share this this repertoire. And I do want to share with our listeners, Patricia's just she's just a treasure trove of resources in and of herself. Because when I first wanted to do this album, one of the things that I had...
When was that idea? Sorry to interrupt you, but I want the listeners to know how was this serendipity moment, this moment when you say, I want to record an album of Catalan art songs? In which year? How was it?
After the Toldrà song that you recommended that I worked on, I had heard one of our peers, Rebecca Coberly, if you're listening down in Texas.
Yes, she sung so beautiful.
Such a beautiful voice, wonderful colleague in the field. And she had sung, I think, two pieces of the Monpó Combate el Somni. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, that is just some beautiful repertoire, and I want to sing it. So I actually programmed that for one of my recitals shortly after I came back from the States. And that's really what began further research for me with the repertoire. And so around 2011, I thought, I think that eventually I would love to do a recording of these pieces, and also to clarify some misconceptions regarding by whom this repertoire should be performed. Because I think, as you and I know, often, I'm not going to pin it solely on North Americans, but I will say that it happens frequently in North America. But Graham Johnson spoke about it, so I guess it happens in the UK as well, where people often think that Spanish, Iberian, Latin American art songs should really be relegated to treble voices primarily, or to sopranos, or to female voices. Mm-hmm. And we know that that yes, many Catalonian composers in the first half of the 20th century dedicated or wrote pieces specifically for a specific soprano, Conchita Badilla. But this music can be performed by all the voice classifications, and so one of the things I was excited to look into more was, well, what of the Catalan art song canon can best serve the tenor voice. So if you recall, I approached you, I don't know how many years ago now it was, and I said, can you list me, can you send me a list of some cycles that you think would serve my voice well, or would be great for tenor voice, my voice. And so you shared some cycles and some songs with me at that time. And one of the cycles that you shared with me was Eduard Toldrá's La Rosa Alciavis.
Que es maravilloso. It's a beautiful song cycle.
You've recorded it, and once I heard it, I just thought, well, I have to get my hands on this music. And you were the first one to send me a copy of the set. And then I just went into the practice room and I tried the repertoire. I sung through some of it, and I immediately knew that was actually the moment. And that was, I think, in 2016 or 2017. I remember I was in a practice room at the Bard Music Festival. I was singing there that summer, and I just realized in that moment I have to record these songs. And so then I just decided, okay, if I have the Toldrà set, if I decide to bring the Monpó set back, then what would be other song cycles, short song cycles, or songs that I could wrap these pieces around? And so in the end, we produced this album, which highlights 6 short song cycles. None of the song cycles on the recording are longer than 13 minutes. The longest one, I believe, is the toldra, which we begin with, and so it's just our joy to be able to share 6 song
Yes,
cycles.
six. You recorded 6 song cycles. How did you show these cycles? You said I sent you one, and then we met once. I went to Delaware all the way there.
You did that. You did a fabulous just session with our students here at the university, and you brought a lot of repertoire. It was just a fabulous concert. We got to talk a little bit more.
With
If you recall.
Oksana.
Yes, you did it with my wife, who's and pianist, collaborative pianist, Dr. Oksana Glauchko.
And the pianist of the CD.
She is indeed. She is indeed. And that was actually part of the inspiration behind also the choosing of the repertoire, because I really wanted a project that could really showcase collaboration between voice and piano, and to be able to select repertoire that really showcased the keyboard as much as it showcases the voice. And if you think, for those of you who aren't familiar with Catalan Art Song, in this sense, Catalan Art Song is similar to the rest of the canon of Spanish song literature, in that so much of the accompaniment patterns and the pianistic patterns can often be quite virtuosic. There is a dance and a communication between neoclassicism and impressionism that we find in France, because so many of these composers of this period went on to study in France. So you can hear Ravel coming through and Debussy coming through, but you can also hear that incredible distinction that makes the repertoire Catalonian. So
Yes,
the repertoire.
because I mean the aesthetic models of the time were dictated by France, not only in Spain but in all over in the world. I mean the world, Europe, the Western world, and our composers were all being trained there. But also, as you mentioned and you were saying, Catalonia is right near to France, so it's kind of natural. The Catalan music has certain quality that I can identify. If I hear 100 things and there are 2 Catalan pieces, I can identify that, because there is something unique to the Catalan music that kind of reflects the geography, the culture, and this kind of mix, or being in between France and Spain, and that also showed in the music.
Yes, I mean it is distinctly different from, let's say, like the music of Andalusia, right?
Yes, completely.
That's a little more hard on the sleeves. There's something more subdued. There's something more introspective and reflective of the repertoire. But you can really sense the passion, not as outwardly, but internally.
It's also
In a very
little bit
profound way.
sad or of nostalgic, if I could say. I mean, we many times when I'm hearing Catalan art songs or looking for repertoire, I have to really make an effort to find happy songs. Because I mean, there is a nostalgia or a sadness. That is this. Actually, when our national day in Catalonia, we are celebrating a lost word, a word that we lost, the time when we lost our nation for last time. So all these things that we are yearning for, something we lost and something we don't have, or this is also reflected in the music. So there is certain sadness or nostalgia or in it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's why people, I think, are surprised when they hear the album, because the title, of course, of the album is Visca L'Amor, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that sometimes folks might think, oh, well, this is an album all about love songs. When we picked the repertoire and we picked the title, by which we wanted to name the album, it was really thinking about love in the broadest of senses. There is filial love, there's agape love, there's love of brotherhood, love of nation, really in the broadest sense. And that was really important to us because there was a cry in the heart of these composers during that time who were really using their art to reflect on their world, on their current state, to address the current state, but to also step outside of the current state, right? And yes, those colors, that cry in the soul, it comes out through the repertoire. So there's this longing, there's this nostalgia, and Visca L'Amor, the title,
celebration,
it's
love.
actually the happiest song.
Happiest, the one
it's
that
the brightest
love
in the whole recording, right?
So, sorry to ask you now. Something also interesting happened with a composer you commissioned. So when we met there in Delaware, we were talking about you were exploring possible repertoire for this CD, etc. And you asked me if I know a composer, somebody. So the festival recently had at that time commissioned the composition of a new song cycle to a Catalan woman composer, Elisenda Fàbregas. So I said, no, she's a great composer. Why don't you get in contact with her? She will be happy to compose something. So I'm very curious about this, how this developed and the music that came from that encounter.
Well, yet again, another way in which you really helped us and supported the project. For me, it was important to not only celebrate the music of composers who were marginalized and no longer with us, but to also celebrate that the practice continues and that Catalonian composers continue to produce incredible and powerful material. And when you introduced me to Elisenda Fàbregas, who's the living Catalonian American composer who we brought onto this project, first thing I did was peruse her previous written music, to listen to it. What I found was a composer who really knew how to write for the voice. She was extremely musical. She understands voice classifications, how vowels need to work through passaggio, through registrations. She immediately started asking me a lot about what I found to be my strengths as a singer, where my voice liked to sit best. She asked me to send her a lot of samples of different repertoire that I love to sing. So she not only tried to communicate her voice, but to align it with what might suit my voice best, and what might also be a good product through which other tenors particularly could communicate Catalonian poetry and music of the 21st century from Catalonia.
So it was kind of tailor-made.
Yeah, so it was just a joy to be able to work with her. I mean, she really is a singer's composer. So any singers who would be interested in looking at composers who really understand what your needs are as a singer, oh my gosh, I just couldn't recommend a better composer to work with.
And what poet did she use?
She used the poetry of Bartomeu Rosselló Porcel, who is a Balearic poet. And he was actually a mover and shaker of Balearic poetry at the time. The Balearic Islands, of course, the official language there, as well as Catalan. And he was just very interesting. The poetry really touches on themes surrounding fire and mysticism and purity, and it's just a powerful collection of poems entitled Imitación del Foc, Imitation of Fire. And
it touches, it reminds me just the title, Falla, El Fuego Fatuo. So it's a fascination of Spanish composers. I mean, you know, this Manuel de Falla wrote the Canción del Fuego Fatuo.
Yes, it is. It is a fascination, and I think what's powerful about this piece is, as you were talking earlier about just the introspective quality of the repertoire. This set, it's strong. It shows range, right, for the tenor. It goes low, but it also goes high. It's very broad and voluptuous and virtuosic for the pianist. Elisenda is a concert pianist herself. So one of the first things she asked me, she said, you know,
who will be playing this?
Who's going to be playing? And do you give me the permission to write in a virtuosic manner? And once she heard Oksana play, she said, "Oh, okay,
wow.
This is fabulous." Because Oksana is a very, very strong pianist, and she cares a lot about color. Not just about getting all the notes right, but of really bringing color out of the piano. And so Elisenda really wrote a score that allows for that to be possible. So it really is a song cycle for a strong singer, but a very, very strong pianist.
So why don't we listen to some of this music? Because I am sure people must be now curious to hear some of this music. Let's hear you and Oksana Glaushko playing this music that is on the CD Visca L'Amor, Catalan Art Songs of the 20th and 21st Century.
Campana Inizi de campana Apimar entrar bras Apimar entrar bras para porta da tarda La bolsa sbloccia apaga udor La bolsa sbloccia apaga unor Tramola Amponjas, 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 blanquinosas de clara, lambit vinclo y perdona. Ignoranzas de vui mateix desvahi d'amigas solitàries argila i calç finestres de la casa tancada, quan torno mossa, d'ora mossa, girama, 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 adesiara.
So we just listened to a fragment of Imitació del Foc by Elisenda Fábregas, performed by Isaí Jess Muñoz and Oksana Glauchko on their new album, Visca L'Amor, that was published by which label?
It's on Bridge label and distributed worldwide through Naxos. And I just really want to thank all of the folks at Bridge who really believed in this project and who have made this labor of love possible to be shared with the world. Becky Starobin, David Starobin. David Starobin is the head of guitar at Manhattan School of Music and also at the Curtis Institute of Music. And so it's been our joy to be able to work with them and their entire team. And of course, engineer, we were very fortunate to bring on Andreas Meyer from Swan Studios in New York City, who's a wonderful multi-Grammy winning engineer. And really, the rest of our team, I really wanted to assemble a group of Hispanic artists to help us with this project. That was something that was really important to me. And so Ana Alasi Jove, the wonderful Catalonian mezzo-soprano who now resides in Austria, was our language coach for this. And Patricia, you also helped with some of the language in the early stages. And our wonderful designer, Anilda Carrasquillo from Cover to Cover Design in Florida, did a beautiful job. I really wanted I wanted the aesthetic of the album to evoke the beauty of the music and to also color that influence that France has on Catalonian art song and on Catalonian music. And so we found this wonderful estate actually here in Delaware, which was owned by the DuPonts and that was inspired by the palace of Louis XIV. And so we were in their gardens doing the photo shoot for all of that, the Nemours estate here in Delaware. So it's been a huge labor of love. You can find out more on the project by visiting www.jessmunoz.com. I'll spell that out quickly. That's www.jessmunoz.com.
Great, that's the way. We want everybody to go right now to listen to this CD.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And I just also want to thank the press that has already really stood behind our championship of this repertoire, this once marginalized repertoire that really deserves to be heard. We've received some really just humbling, just wonderful reviews thus far, and we're honored that people have taken the time to listen to the recording and to say such lovely things about the music, and so that has brought us tremendous joy.
So tremendous joy is the one that I feel when I see you and hear you and know about this project, because I feel that the whole purpose of the Barcelona Festival of Song is seeing this music promoted worldwide and sung by great singers like you are, and pianists like Oksana Glauchko is. So this is, I mean, the dream come true of the festival. That one of the persons who have passed through it is now advocating this repertoire and promoting it and giving life to this music. So this is a tremendous joy for me and all the people who are related to the Barcelona Festival of Song.
And for us, it's a joy to be able to disseminate this repertoire, but to also disseminate all the good work that you continue to do, Patricia, in the field. I mean, it's not singular, right? The list of people who are now advocating for Iberian and Latin American song because of the work that you've done. It's many. It's many people who have walked away. I don't know how many alums you have now, but I imagine it's over 100 plus. And I don't know of a person who hasn't attended the festival in Barcelona who doesn't come back to the United States saying, I am irrevocably changed. I am changed for the better, and not to be too cliche, but because of the tremendous work that I got to do there, and the resources, the fact that the center where the festival happens is adjacent to the Biblioteca de Catalonia is an incredible thing. And that we're able to really be there long enough to take in the sights and the sounds of the culture and of the people and of the heritage. You really walk away with an understanding that you're dealing with something very unique, with something distinctive and special. And you walk away with a sense of great responsibility to come back and to share this music. So my hope is that people will pick up this music. If not my album, listen to Victoria de los Angeles. Listen to other singers like Carmen Bustamante, who I just think is Joan Caballero. I just think that there's so many wonderful native singers. People often ask me, well, how can I wrap my ear around this?
You see, I can now answer this question to those people. I have, if they would like to follow me on Spotify, not Patricia the artist, but Patricia the user. Patricia the user has countless playlists divided by genre countries. So Catalan art song, Colombian art song, Peruvian art song, Argentinian art song, tango, salsa, jazz, all kind of different genres, but to introduce people and students, voice students, or people who are just interested about expanding their musical horizons, to learn about these different traditions, and they will find composers and performers in those playlists if you follow me on Spotify.
Yes, that's incredibly important. So follow Patricia on Spotify. Follow me on Spotify.
Of course.
We're all disseminating just this great collection of repertoire, and it's so exciting. And that people are responding to it the way they are. That's very moving too.
So I'm sure this CD will bring you many happiness, or I don't know, joys, alegrías. Te va a traer muchas alegrías, because it's done, as you mentioned, with a lot of dedication, love, with carefully done, and the music is beautiful, and the work you and Oksana did is great. So this CD only will be opening more and more doors for you and your beautiful career, Jess.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words, and just for the kindness that you have shown us and so many artists through the years, Patricia. We're so grateful to you and the tremendous work that you've done and that you continue to do. So
that's my life mission. So I do it because I cannot do other thing than that. It's a passion. And I know that since many years ago, I felt I got this awareness that my life is so small. I mean, in terms, if you see in time, with a historic perspective, the life of one person is just very little, very little. But if I can do something to inspire the other people who are following, and as many people as I can inspire, better, because this repertoire is huge. It's for many lives, for many singers who have to sing this music and enjoy it, and also for audiences to discover this music. So my contribution is very small in the historic context, but I want to do as much as I can in this very short time that I'm in this earth.
Well, I think that, we're running out of time, but I think that one of the larger, broader things is that the work that you're doing and the work that we're now joining you in, it's speaking to something larger, right? It's not just the music of Iberia and Latin America that's marginalized. I think of all of the nations of the world, and just like us, there are many other countries that
Yes.
that have dealt with this kind of marginalization. And so we inspire each other. I think of my colleagues who are championing Korean art song, and
Yes.
colleagues who are championing Swahili composers,
Wow,
right?
great. Yes, that if we could inspire young singers with something, isn't that just there to open your mind and look outside of what is taught at the universities, that is very limited, and also change. I mean, some people still think that the history of music is the European music. That's music. When said they refer to the history of music and they study the history of music, they just study the history of European music. This assumption that puts Europe as the center, and as the only producer of good music, this is wrong, and this is a construction, a recent construction in history. So if we can inspire people to just say, okay, let's study the histories of musics, and let's go on to see in the same with the same value and valorization the music of Philippines, of Malaysia, of China, of I don't know which place in Africa, or the music. I mean, all this music they need to be revived and seen and heard. We are
Absolutely.
we are ¿cómo se dice? Terráqueos. No somos de la tierra, no.
Yes, we're of the earth, and we want to be able to experience the earth and to taste it, to taste all the colors of the earth, and to welcome people to our tables, right, of all different nations and creeds. This is, well, I can go on, but that's something that, of course, is very, very dear and near to my heart, and I know dear and near to yours, and that is why the Catalonian story really moved me and touched me, because I saw so much of myself reflected inside of that story, and I know that so many others will as well. And regardless of what it is that we're celebrating on this earth, if you've ever felt the joy of making it through a struggle, or the joy of taking a step forward in a way that advocates for something that you know to be right, then you'll understand this music, you'll understand this heritage, and so again, thank you, Patricia, and thank you to all of you who joined us today. And we just invite you to share and celebrate this music with your students and with your colleagues and friends.
See, and to finish this, we will let people hearing this, you and Oksana singing a few songs by Eduard Toldrá.
Yes, we'll be sharing now just a few songs from Eduard Toldrá's La Rosa als Llavis, which is featured on our latest album. And again, you can find out more information about the album, how to purchase it, by visiting www.jessmuñoz.com. 。
Estonium Danium conot sabes, tampoc ningú sabria el meu destí. Cap altre llavi no em tindria pres, però amb el teu nom faria el meu camí. Un ram de noies em farà conat, ni la cançó sota el drinc de la copa. Vaixells de guerra vinguessin al port, però jo aniria mariner de popa. Si jo posava la bandera al pal, era molt alta. Ti veuria dalt.
Muy bien, and don't forget subscribe to this podcast, please. We are in all digital platforms. Subscribe, invite your friends to subscribe. If you are a teacher, you will see that this is a wonderful academic resource for your students, and if you are a student, you will always be learning and learning, so you will come back to this. Subscribe, support this podcast. This podcast is brought to you thanks to the Barcelona Festival of Song. It's also brought to you thanks to Mundo Arts and to the Center for Iberian and Latin American Music of the University of California, Riverside. So we expect next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, you connect again to hear more wonderful music and to meet more wonderful people as Isaí Jess Muñoz. Hasta luego, amigos.